So the GlideRide was one of ASIC's first shoes to incorporate the high cushioned and rockered trend. The second version keeps that same philosophy but has some general updates. After putting over 100 kilometers on the shoe, I'm ready to give you my full review. So throughout this review, I will be using my shoe stoplight analysis, which means if I give it a green light, that means there are more pros than there are cons. If I give it a yellow light, then there's about equal pluses and minuses, and if I give it a red light, there are more negatives than there are positives. And at the end, I'll give it a go, a slow, or a no. So this shoe was provided to me by ASICS for the purpose of review, but that does not have any influence over me or my review. And with all that stuff out of the way, let's finally get into the review. So let's start with this upper. Like I mentioned in my first impressions video, I found that the fit of the GlideRide 2 was a bit big. My typical size 12 felt a bit roomier and longer in the toe than most other shoes, and I probably could have gone with an 11.5 and have been fine. Despite the shoe feeling a tad long, I never had issues with heel slipping, and my midfoot was secure without having to mess around with the laces. The upper material is nice and seamless and has a good amount of flexibility. However, it isn't super stretchy, but even on long runs it never felt uncomfortable. So when running in the GlideRide 2 on warmer days, my feet did tend to get a bit toasty since the breathability in the shoe isn't the best. I wouldn't say it suffocates the foot, but it definitely isn't breezy either. Alright, now let's talk about this midsole. So underfoot you get a thick stack height with 40mm in the heel and 35 in the forefoot, including the sock liner, and that gives you a drop of 5mm. Although there is a lot of stack underneath your foot, it isn't the softest or bounciest cushion. The midsole has a softer top layer of flight foam and a firmer layer of flight foam Propel on the bottom. In between there is a nylon plate. I found that this combination of midsole materials provided a nice responsive ride that was on the firmer side, but still lively. With the Outsole technology, it has a nice rocker that gives you a smooth heel-to-toe transition at any pace. It never felt clunky despite that amount of cushioning. So with about 75 miles on the GlideRide 2, the midsole still feels like it has plenty of life in it, and is one of those shoes that could last up to 500 miles. Alright, now let's talk about the outsole. Despite there not being as much outsole rubber as you typically find on ASICS shoes, the rubber that is there has been very durable, and I haven't seen too much major wear. I also found this outsole to grip well on roads and hard-packed trails, but if you're going to run on more technical and rocky trails, definitely opt for a dedicated trail shoe instead. So with a decent amount of rubber on the outsole, it doesn't add too much weight, but at 7.3 ounces it is a bit heavy, especially compared to many other high cushion trainers out there. Now let's go on to the stoplight run type portion of the review, where I'll go through speed day, everyday, long run day, and recovery day. Starting with speed day, the GlideRide 2 gets a yellow light. So with the combination of that plate, the rocker, and that firmer foam, this shoe does feel really good when picking up the pace. However, this plush upper and just the weight in general of the shoe definitely does not help it feel fast, and as you try and pick up the pace more and more, the shoe feels heavier and heavier. For everyday, the GlideRide 2 gets a green light. So I found that the GlideRide 2 was pretty much a perfect everyday trainer. It felt comfortable no matter the pace, and I knew that would hold up no matter how many miles I threw at it. For long run day, the GlideRide 2 also gets a green light. So with all that foam underneath the foot and that nice comfortable plush upper, this shoe was great for long runs. No matter how far the distance, my legs felt comfortable at the end of it. Plus, the wider base of the shoe and that rocker technology meant that towards the end of the run, when I started to get tired, these technologies worked together to help me along. And finally, for recovery day, the GlideRide 2 gets a yellow light. So I thought that the GlideRide 2 was just kind of meh for recovery days. I think that if the cushion was a bit softer and maybe a bit less rockered, that it would have done better. What I think ASICS really should do is make this top layer of foam with their Flight Foam Blast, so it's that nice soft and bouncy foam right at the top, and then you still have that firmer Flight Foam Propel on the bottom. That way when you're going slower you get that nice kind of bouncy foam at the top, but when you're picking up the pace you still sink into that firmer foam, similar to what Hoka did with the Mach 4. So although there are some changes from the first GlideRide, the GlideRide 2 is still a great high cushioned everyday trainer. So a couple main areas that I thought the shoe could use work in are with a grippier outsole and a softer top layer of foam. But other than that, I thought this was a pretty good shoe, and I think that it shows that ASICS can keep up with that trend of being high cushioned and have a rocker and a plate in there. So for the price of the shoe, the GlideRide 2 comes in at $150, and I think this is a bit steep. I know you're getting a pretty long-lasting shoe with a lot of cushion, but I think around the $130 would have been better. Alright, now let's go ahead and take a look at the results. You can see that it's pretty close with there being almost an equal amount of green and yellow, but I'm going to give the ASICS GlideRide 2 a slow. I say this because a lot of times if you see a high cushioned rockered shoe, people are just going to assume that it's similar to a Hoka where it's nice and soft and pillowy, but this shoe is a little deceiving because it is on that firmer, more responsive side. So I think it depends what your preference is, if you like more responsive cushion or softer, more plush cushioning. So thanks for watching. I have a lot more reviews from ASICS coming up, including the Noosa Tri 13. If you want to see me compare this against the Noosa Tri 13, definitely let me know in the comments down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos, and as always, keep on running.